Welcome to Switching On Electrified Skills, the podcast that sparks your curiosity and ignites your passion for a career in electrification. I'm Deepak Farmer. Join me on this electrifying adventure where I connect you with industry leaders, visionary education providers, and pioneers driving the electric revolution. Discover the world of skills, jobs, and community, gaining actionable insights, inspiring stories, and the latest developments. We're joined today by two very experienced guests. Coming here to join us from Remit Training, we've got Bob Gearey, Head of Business Development, and Darryl West, Commercial Director. Now, it's really interesting today because our guests are here from what we classify in the industry as a alternative provision or independent learning centre. And I'm really interested to hear multiple different aspects of this because a lot of the perceptions, and what I mean by alternative provision, is that we have a lot of colleges, schools and universities, but there are a huge amount of opportunities for our guests and a lot of people that are coming into this space that can be provided by alternative provisions that run slightly differently and offer different provisions in terms of, pathways, learning opportunities. But what I want to do is firstly have a little bit of a introduction from my guests today before we get into the main parts of a alternative training provision. And we'll start with Bob. Bob, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, in terms of background and everything?
Yes, please.
So I started my career my main part of my career with one of the two big well-known oil companies in the UK. And it's come full circle in a way in that I was dealing with the automotive industry when I started there. So logistics, haulage, and effectively selling them fuel. And as my career developed at that company, I became a key account manager and went into the manufacturing space. So it was really providing all the oils for process oils for factories to run, which was absolutely fascinating. So all your gear oils, hydraulic oils, etc. An initial fill. So dealt with the automotive industry, some of the big names in that. And really it was a bit like that TV show, How Does That Work? And how do they make that? It was a live version of it. I got to find out everything about manufacturing industry. It was absolutely fascinating. And after 10 years of working there, I moved into the training sector, which was quite seamless in that all of that time I was working at the oil company. I didn't really look at all the people working there and think about the skill sets that they needed and how important that was. So it was really going from talking about a product that they needed to a service that they needed, as in training. So I spent the next 10 years with a couple of training providers dealing with the engineering workforce development side of it and the whole skill set and apprenticeships. I was about when the levy came in and everything changed in 2017. And as I say, it's now come full circle in that I'm working for Remit Training and I'm dealing again with the automotive, haulage, logistics sector. And again, it's absolutely fascinating to look at how important it is to the economy and the country to have the skills in place to keep particularly the commercial heavy goods vehicles working and on the road, and as I say, the skill sets that are needed.
Amazing. That's such an important background. We're going to come back to your background because there's a couple of interesting points in your background that I want to sort of elaborate on, and I think that our audience will really resonate with some of your experiences. And Darryl, tell us a little bit about your background and how you've ended up in Remit, and obviously doing a podcast with me about skills.
Yes, definitely. I've been involved in the motor trade at various aspects, from apprenticeship right the way up to managing director for the last 37 years. I've worked for 25 of those years. I worked for a local diesel independent company that was doing repairs on all sorts of vehicles, whether it be plant right the way up to marine. Then we were doing HGVs. So I've seen a fair bit of different sort of changes as we've moved throughout the years. Sadly, after COVID, I had to take some time off because I got a poorly wife at the time, and I got made redundant. I was 50, just over 50, or 51 actually. All I'd ever known was the garage trade. All I'd ever been was involved in the motor trade side of it, be it at whatever level. I did fancy the training side of it. I did fancy looking at going to training, and I applied for a job at Remit to be a technical trainer with the apprenticeships for the level 3 apprenticeship that we've got standards. The wife encouraged me massively because she's been involved in training for many years. at an FE college, and I absolutely loved it. I wanted to get my knowledge and pass my knowledge on to the next level of technicians. I know from when I first started 30 plus years ago that my apprenticeship was a YTS, if people can remember them, many moons ago, which was a 2-year program. Yeah. We have got, it's only in the last sort of, I'd say probably 10, 15 years that we've started getting the apprenticeships back to somewhere where it needs to be. I applied for the job at Remit and got it, as I've said. Found that I really did enjoy what I was doing massively. This is only just over 3 years ago when I first had was doing it. Got made up to head of technical training. Got put on various courses. Anything that we wanted reinvested in me. I got an offer of a job earlier on this year, which was the automotive commercial director job. It's nothing like I've ever done before. It was quite a massive shock, really, to be offered that. I didn't believe in my own capabilities because it's something I haven't done. I spoke to our CEO and our chairman at the time and expressed, look, do you really think that I'm the right man for this job? And they have put and given me that much guidance, and they've I've got a coach that comes out, a mentor coach, because they said, I'm retraining. I'm doing what we are talking about today with all the rest of the people that are in the automotive trade. At the time, I was very, very sceptical about whether we'll be able to do it. Bob came on board a couple of months after I got into the position in February. We've got a very new business team that's come onto it. And then we've got 4, soon to be 5 technical trainers and a brand new academy. So in the last sort of 3 years, me from being the guy that you took your lorry in to have it serviced to now where I'm sitting in here with Deepak and Bob doing this podcast, it's quite a massive change from what I was used to doing, to be fair. But I love what I do.
You sound like you do, and I think that's such an important part of what I want to build on shortly. And I just want to come back to Bob as well. With your background, because we've talked about this, and your journey hasn't been straightforward either, especially from moving from a completely different sector into this space, but also around the COVID times and the moments that you went through it. I know that you've had some pretty difficult times, and I think that, like I said, there are many people who will be listening to this that will be looking at you almost aspirationally, right, to try to be in positions like yourselves, coming from very similar situations, right? And I'd love to, if you could share a little bit about, that time and how it felt when you were, looking at this journey from the start, right, and thinking, well, what a long way I've got to go. How did it feel, and what was your actual?
You mean the COVID situation?
Yeah, exactly.
Obviously that I've had other challenges further back in the past, but that particular one, it was coincidence in terms of timing. I'd been working at a training provider, and sometimes things just don't work out. So I'd moved on from there, and I was doing an interim job while I was looking at other providers to work for, and just horrific timing, COVID hit. So because I wasn't employed or been self-employed for a period of time, at that point I was one of the less than 5% of the population, I think it was, who got absolutely nothing in terms of furlough. So financially that really was a challenge. But for me, the key to everything is to stay calm and have a think about how am I going to get through this period. And again, I did manage to get a role that completely different. It was managing a team of people actually taking the universal credit calls. So I had a team remotely of 25 staff doing that, which was different again, but it got me through it, kept my head above water. And then obviously as everything started to open up again, I started to look at new roles back in what I'm good at doing, which is dealing with clients in the training sector. And here I am at Remit. Been there just short of 2 years now, and as Darryl said, it's all been a bit unexpected how it's come about. Our team, we only really formed in April of this year, and we're just really starting to see the results. And now in terms of like the clients that we're bringing on board and the growth of the team.
Just going back to during this COVID period, what do you think, made you, there's many people that will just sit back and, well, this is my situation and I can't really fix it, and therefore I'm not going to do anything about it. Whereas you were still driving, still trying to figure out, what was the next step for you.
Yeah.
What was that mindset like? What made you do that? I mean, what was it? What were the pressures around you that made you driven enough to be able to, keep moving forward in terms of trying to find your next opportunity?
I prefer to work than not work. I've got two sons who they're in their early 20s now, and you want to set an example as well. So yeah, and the reality of it is that, as I say, that what I was going to get from the state system it didn't even cover 50% of my bills, so I had to work. But as you know, as everyone knows, there were no opportunities at the time. The country was closed down, and that was literally the only opportunity that there was. So it actually came about. One of my sons was at university, and he'd got a part-time job at that company doing one of the helplines. When people rang in about symptoms or whatever it was, and they run a lot of the different lines. So through him, I managed to get a contact and get a job there, and it was literally minimum wage, and then built my way back up from there. But like I say, it's partly my own self-esteem that whether it's minimum wage or not, I want to feel like I'm doing something and adding some value somewhere. And secondly, as I say, setting an example to them.
That's a great way to say it, setting an example. I think in this situation, by sharing this with us, I think you're not just setting an example for your kids, but also for everyone that will be listening, because I think that's an important part of trying to draw that. Actually, it's about that determination, setting an example, being valued, right, and feeling like you're adding value. I think that's really important. So yeah, no, thank you for sharing that. And Darryl, we spoke earlier, and your circumstances were also, quite, I think, pressurizing in terms of, how you ended up in this position. You mentioned about, your wife being taken not too well, and I can't imagine that being easy on any level, putting additional pressures on. And you mentioned, thinking about it in terms of age, what do I do now, having spent all of this stuff, But you did mention that your wife might have been ill. She had spent a long career in teaching and training herself, which she then guided you. I think you said that a little bit around, potentially being able to give back a little bit around training. And I think it's the right thing to do, because a lot of our, experience, seems to, you could say, die with age, right? But the fact is that, we never get the opportunity to pass that on. And I think that, that's quite an inspiring story as well. How did that, feel at that time when, you were still trying to discover your path in terms of, trying to give back to, people through training and, education?
As I've said before, when I did the YTS, and it was quite apparent that the apprenticeship side of it, we've got a massive skill shortage, massive, still have now. We are addressing it, but by no means that we need to address it by. My own pathway, trying to find it, I think I probably lacked a little bit of self-belief. I've got a very supportive family that was doing it at the time and said, "You do it, you'll love it, you'll really excel at it." And I took this the best bit of advice I've ever taken. My father at the time was talking to him about it, and he said, just have a go at it. If you go to work and you enjoy it, you'll never go to work for the rest of another day in your life. If you do something that you enjoy, and I do enjoy it, and I still enjoy it, and I'm very enthused about seeing the light bulb moment on some of the guys or the girls that you have in the classrooms when you're talking to them about it, and all of a sudden you can see that it's gone in, the knowledge has gone in, and they think, and then they smile and they think, I wouldn't understand I was doing that. And that's quite inspiring for people that you're doing it. You could stand and talk to them about that. At whatever level, whatever age level, it's still now with the commercial side of it that we run with it. The actual making a difference, the actual getting skills back into it and building things up. We're going to talk a little bit about EV a little later on, as we've said. We do all sorts of courses that do that, bespoke courses. People stay in the lane. I was one of the biggest ones. I only used to do what I knew, what I did. What I knew that I could do was fine. I was very, very sort of stuck, not going out of my comfort zone. I could do X, I could do Y, I could do Z, but I didn't want to touch electrics. I didn't want to touch that. And then going back into it, even myself in my personal journey, going back in as a technical trainer, I learned as a trainer a lot of stuff that I didn't know when I was actually on the shop floor. It was always every day's a school day. That's the oldest story that everybody tells you, and it is. It was everybody, and they was telling me things about this is how this works. And I thought, well, I'm sure that don't work like that. And then it gives you the impetus to go and have a look, and think, oh yeah, that's right. So you're actually personal. You're bettering yourself personally with your own skill set, as well as passing it on to other people. I'm a lot more self-confident now about what we're doing and how we deliver with the training side of it, and the training element that Remit do and where we're at. I think it covers everything. It's second to none.
I think that from the way you both of yourselves talk, it's clear that you have found something that you never thought you'd find. Right, and that is, a place of belonging, a place where you think you can add value, but that doesn't come naturally, right? It comes through employers taking a proactive approach to valuing their employees and their staff as much as they value their clients, right? And living those values through that. Clearly, Remit Training value you and have taken you from darker times you had and given you opportunities to be able to work in such influential spaces where you can help so many others. It's clear here to me that the values that they hold as an organization resonate right the way through their employees, right the way through to their clients, and in this case being students and apprentices and employers who they work with to support skills development. And I think it would be good to hear a little bit more about Remit and how they work and what do they do and also how they operate as a independent provider, and how that sort of compares a little bit to your colleges, your schools, your traditional places where you would go. Do you want to start with this, Bob? Maybe, yeah,
can do.
It's a big question, but a very interesting one. I think it's important people understand the difference and what they offer and how they make it happen.
Okay, well, I guess the first thing I'd say is Remit's mantra is that we're big enough to deliver excellence but small enough to care, which is a really good way of wrapping it all up. To give a context to that, we've got approximately 270 staff who deliver apprenticeships and commercial courses all over the country, which effectively is a medium-sized provider. You talked about values. We've got a list. They're all listed on the company website, and it's everything you mentioned around integrity, honesty, doing the right thing first time. And I think what probably encompasses it all is that we had an Ofsted inspection a couple of months ago, and we've achieved outstanding grade 1 across the board.
That's fantastic,
including in leadership and management. And for an organisation as complex as Remit, trust me, that is incredibly difficult to achieve. There are other grade 1 providers, for example, small nurseries, etc. But if you've got 270 staff and you're delivering a diverse range of programs, we deliver not just automotive, we deliver leadership and management, IT and digital, business services. We deliver to various sectors, including the hospitality sector, the retail sector. We've got huge clients. And when Ofsted come in, they give you very short notice deliberately, so you can't really prepare for it, and they go into everything. So it's the quality of your teaching, it's your lesson plans, they interview learners, they interview clients, they interview your development coaches, your instructors, your tutors, and clearly we've got people who work in our business who are dedicated, passionate, and clearly it's come across that the way we deliver training, whether it's an apprenticeship or a commercial short course in Darryl and I's area, that's the standard. We do it in an outstanding way. And another thing I think that needs to be said about it is when it comes to the client and the learner, Remit do listen and discuss it. And so, look, certainly on our side, what is it that you want to get out of this? Yeah. And we develop bespoke programs as well as off-the-shelf programs. So that's probably where we do differ in quite a big way from a lot of other providers, is that we'll talk to that client. We had an example recently with one of the very well-known construction companies who wanted a 3-day course putting together on the automotive side. And again, as we've described, we kind of work as a duo. I had all those conversations about what it was that they wanted and what the budget was and everything else. And then Darryl worked with them to put the content together. And we've just had the feedback from the delegates who came on it. And it was just, again, the word outstanding was used over and over again. So it's about all of that kind of bringing to the fore the expertise, the passion of the instructors that they've all worked in industry and then come into teaching, much like Darryl. But then, as I say, at my level, it's about discussing what is it that you want to get out of this, what you're trying to achieve as an organisation by investing in this training, and then building the programme from there to make sure that they're delighted with the outcome.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the flexibility, in terms of being agile enough to be able to build a bespoke program or be able to meet the needs of the client is absolutely critical, because ultimately they want to have a return on that investment through their, people, and people are at the center of, everything that we do in terms of developing or innovation or research or developing new products even. And I think that is an important part. And Ofsted being, Ofsted is having done Ofsted inspections myself in the past. I think the one thing that they definitely can say is they work on behalf of the student and the client. So therefore, what they're looking for effectively is, are the people getting value for money, right? Are they, being looked aftered, right, and being trained in the right way? And as part of that, especially at level 1, 2, 3, at the more college levels, it's important that the client absolutely knows that although they're paying the price and we've negotiated everything, right, and we're ready to go, that what they get in return as a delivery, right, the technical training, is of a high standard, right? It's aligned to something, right? It has a recognition, right? Now, as universities, we have obviously huge research centers and we're at the forefront of that, right? So we have our regulators and we do a lot of work to make sure that we have the latest and best, technical skills. But we don't operate at the school college level, right? And therefore we have awarding bodies. So from a technical perspective, and this is one for yourself, Darryl, what is it that, you do that makes sure that when a client comes to you, whether it be a business or an individual just looking to do training, that they are reassured that they're getting the right education and the right technical training, and that, it's of the standard that employers, right, would employ at, right, is an important part, I think. How do you do that?
We would look, as Bob has said before, we'd have a conversation around the training needs. Mm-hmm. We are IMI accredited, so every course that we run with is through the IMI. Various different levels of courses, from level 1 right through to level 4. Just
for the audience, IMI stands for
Institute for the Motor
Industry. That's it. So that is an accrediting body that is recognised across the country, right? Who support accreditations for most schools and colleges around the automotive sectors, all right, and automotive training provisions.
They have gone international now.
Well, there you go. International.
They do a lot more than just accredit the courses as well. They do a lot of work with the sector, data research.
Development, okay, brilliant. So staying at the forefront of that, sort of, what's coming and what do you need to be aware of. And also, I assume they also do not just do the accreditations, but also monitor the quality standards.
Yeah, we have to. Everything that's invigilated has to be done by an IMI invigilation to keep it as a set standard.
Excellent, brilliant.
We are at Remit. We are actually actively involved with them at course development as well. So if there's the IMI level 1s to 4 EV courses, we'll actually go and there's a trailblazer body that sits together and looks at all the qualifications that are coming and what's to keep them current, keep them relevant, to keep them what we need them to drive it forward. So we're actually at the table with that. We are actively involved in national occupational standards as well. So anything that we'll need, there's a lot of talk at the moment around the EV level 2, level 2.1, which is the recovery sector. Okay. It's being revamped. We are actively involved with them there, giving our input of what we think needs to be involved in it, what we think is not necessarily going to be any good for it. what level it needs to be. We've got a lot of cars now, EV stuff that's coming, that's getting sort of 10, 15 years old, that's coming towards the end of the life. We've got to have some way of end-of-life disposal of batteries, safe disposal of batteries. This is something we're looking together with them. So we'd actually, going back to your original point of what we would say, what do you need to do? What do you want to do? What does your employer need you to do with, in regards of health and safety, in regards of what the jobs they're going to be taking on? And then we'd guide them into which area that they're going to be doing at whatever level. Level 1 is quite an entry level. Level 2 is specialised. Level 2 is normal. People that are working at probably a level 2/3 NVQ level or a level 3 education, that's when we look for that. That gives them a general overview of being able to actively and safely work on bits of the cars, not actually work on it live. We go on to level 4, which is level 4 where we start taking batteries to pieces, which is the real high end that we're doing. But not everybody wants to get that far involved with it. So this is where we have to hit the criteria of what they're asking us to do. We don't ever try and oversell a course. We try and sell them what they want and what's the best for them. Certainly with EV level 3, which is one of our most popular courses, we give them, they have to do that before they do level 4 anyway, but we'll give them the option of, this is what it allows you to do. If you want to progress and to do that, then you need to do this course. So I think it's a big thing is communication with them and actually asking them what they want and what they want to achieve, rather than just taking something off the shelf and just saying that'll do for you. I think it's not necessarily a bespoke course, probably a bespoke training program per learner, because every learner is different. Every SME or every manufacturer is slightly different. They want it to be able to work on such and such. We are very flexible with that. We do flexible delivery. We do weekdays. We even do weekends, which is something around. We do this thing called Our Place or Yours, which means you can come into one of our 5 academies or we can come to you. So if you've got a big enough cohort, we can come down to you with all our training equipment that comes on site. We can do that. So that's another thing that adds to our bow as well. We are looking at development for online courses, for international online courses at the moment. That's the way we're looking heavily into that. And we're just starting to progress into hot off the press of smart repairs. So that's the next thing we're going to be looking at. So we're trying to keep sort of quite abreast. We're not, I wouldn't say we do everything that ever is done with the automotive trade, but we try and do probably 99.9%. I think that's probably what it is, so we can cover it. And what we do, I'm biased, but what we do well.
EV-wise, you mentioned EV, and we are, as you know, progressing, I think, a lot faster than we thought, right, in terms of, the electrification space, not just in the automotive space, but everywhere, infrastructure, rail, freight, whatever it might be, HGVs. We have a number of researchers that work at the university who are working with employers testing motors for, heavy goods vehicles. And we're doing more and more stuff around logistics and, warehousing and, movement of goods A to B. But from your perspective, what are you seeing? Because this would be very important to our listeners. What are you seeing as opportunities and career opportunities that are coming through? And at what scale? Go back 5 years ago, right? I think there was a growth, but I think there's been a significant growth, especially in the last 2 years. And obviously we have targets with the government to hit. So that's driving a lot of this, electrification space. What are you seeing from employers, right, in terms of those sort of careers and those opportunities that, we want people to be trained in this, but ultimately the destination of training is that they get employed somewhere, they have a job, a prosperous career, right? What's that looking like at the moment?
I had a conversation with the IMI Chem, and we had an opening of the new academy earlier on last month, and they give us a presentation on some of the figures that they've got running around at the moment. And I think they said that we are looking at 220,000 technicians that we've got throughout the English and Scotland, and around about 18% of them have trained to any level of EV. We've got a growth of 20% of all new cars have to be EV and hybrid, and this goes up every year. We know we had a bit of a reprieve for the petrol and diesel engines to 2035. However, the actual settings that they've got for these cars to go, they go to 26%, 29%, 30%. And for every car that they don't actually meet, the manufacturer has to pay back £16,000. So there is an incentive to everybody to move to electrification or electrification of vehicles. at certain levels. EV level 1 is when people, it's an awareness course. It's basically people that are driving it, valeters. It's for everybody that's ever comes in contact with them. We've seen a lot of people that are doing that. We've got a lot of clients that we're doing about vehicle movement. So there's a lot of auction houses that are doing it. There's a lot of people that are working at the docks that are doing it. And they have to have a general overview of health and safety of what they need to do. A level 2, 2.1, and level 3 is the biggest growth one that we're going to have. It is going to be slightly altered for people that do recovery, blue light, so it's going to be the emergency services. And then you leave it for your general people that are going to be able to work on vehicles. And the level 4, as I said earlier, that's quite an in-depth sort of technical side of it. So that's when they start going to take things to pieces and to start repairing the batteries. We've got a massive influx coming at the moment of Chinese vehicles. We've got whether it be the Aura Funky Cat, which is the IM group. We've got another one called BYD, Chery. These are all going to swamp in the next 2 or 3 years because they've got a low import duty over in China. They've got being able to actually produce them about 25% cheaper than we can. Wow. So which makes them more appealing to everybody. They've got massive spec on the cars. People like your main manufacturers, European manufacturers and Japanese manufacturers should be thinking serious about it because we've got a lot of these are coming through a lot of cheaper product. That's going to explode in the next few years. And we haven't got enough people at the moment to actually work on them and to service them and to maintain them.
So the opportunities that you're talking about here are
massive.
Quite big.
Yeah, they're huge.
You're talking about a huge economy, shift. And, I guess then the question becomes, right, is where do we get them from, right? And you mentioned about level 1, 2, and 3, right? And I guess they're progressive routes, right? But there is the idea that you will always have a growth, natural growth from school to college to wherever they want to go vocationally, right? And deliver this. But we're also talking about a huge market, right, of people that are already trained and already in jobs that could potentially, right, be used to support, right, the new economy that we're trying to, drive towards. What sort of provision, what sort of offers and provisions, and how do they access, right, the opportunities that someone like or an organisation like Remit might offer?
Well, when you say they could support or they could be used in the future, I think it's critical for the companies that they already work for to invest in them in terms of cross-skilling, upskilling. So if you have a maintenance technician who's mechanically minded at the moment, we run a course, for example, that teaches electrical diagnostics over a 6-day period, and that gives that person a new skill set. Outside of even the electrification stuff, we haven't even touched on ADAS, so that's the advanced driver assist system. There's already a huge gap in terms of training on that, which again we cover. But yeah, I mean, it's getting the balance between, like a lot of industries, there's an ageing workforce, and on the apprenticeship side, clearly you need a mentor when you're being an apprentice. So again, it's about awareness of that before people retire, they need to pass on their skills, knowledge, behaviours to the next generation as a mentor. And for me, a key part of it, maybe we'll go on to it on a separate question, but it's about raising awareness, whether it's with through schools and the careers advice or lack of it, and that's not a slight on the schools, because what you don't know, you don't know. Yep. But I don't think there's enough awareness of the opportunities that are in industry at the moment, in the automotive industry. So it's about making people aware and also looking at there's been a tendency in the past, both in the engineering roles that I did previously and in automotive, of the high achievers all should go to university and do law degrees and everything else. The lower achievers can go and work in a garage, and it's just not the case. There's so many amazing opportunities to build your career once you're into the industry. And again, in the future, that if you think of how wide those opportunities might be from there's light vehicle, there's cars, there's heavy vehicle, there's the parts side of the industry. Look at Darryl and his story. So he's come in at entry level at the beginning of his career as a technician, then trained up to master tech level, run his own business, and now he's the commercial director of a national training company. So who'd think that when you talk about being a technician in a local garage? You wouldn't. But again, I don't think there's enough awareness how you do that in the future and make those career opportunities available to everybody. Again, social media is probably going to play a big part. There's so many different ways to reach young people now and get those messages across that whether it's government or industry, everybody needs to put their heads together and think about how you make that awareness happen.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's such an important part. I mean, part of the work that we were ourselves working with government are trying to do, as you are aware, is the National Electrification Skills Hub, right, is about collaboration. It's about bringing people together from different organisations, different remits, and working, trying to raise this podcast, going out to an audience, inspiring story, exactly what you said, right, from technician to commercial director. Now, somebody thinking early on in their career is going to be thinking, well, I've got to train really hard, and it is hard work, right? I've got to train, right, to become a technician. I don't see it that way. I see it as you're training to set yourself on a path, right, of a different and prosperous career. And if anything we're seeing in our research is that the EV space is definitely going to be economically, prosperous for many, many people in terms of careers, not just that moment in time, that job that they're doing, but what they might be doing in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years time. From all the work that we're doing, we're seeing that more and more the education space is changing, right? From, as I mentioned, around your fixed points of entry and exit, but to tailored pathways, right? A choice for the individual that I want to choose to start at this point and leave at this point, and therefore whatever I gain in between is going to have an impact on my job and my career and my prosperous. And I think that the fact that you are offering, the structure, right, for apprentices and apprenticeships and risk and all those sort of courses, there is also the element of things that are not accredited, right, but are still very much valid, right, in terms of competency gaining, right? Can employers, at the moment absolutely love the idea that if they send somebody on to a 5-day CPD, they're going to come back and bring something to my organization that I didn't have. What do you see that is most important? Because we mentioned what we were effectively talking about was employers, right? What are they looking for, right, in terms of the value add to their organizations when they invest in people, right? There's a whole idea, and we know this from our research, that employers tend to be a little bit afraid, right? That if they invest in somebody, that they could train them and then they would leave. But you mentioned earlier to me about retention. You talked to me about other values. You mentioned to me about what's on the list of priorities for people who are working in organizations. What messages would you like to put out there for all the employers?
Again, we looked at some, but the IMI gave us some details a few weeks ago. In regards, I think it was a study by McKinsey's around about staff retention and what they value. I think it was top 5. I think it was, the first one's obviously going to be pay. At number 3, can't quite sure remember what number 2 was, but number 3 it was training, CPD, professional development, personal development, and they was quite high up at what they look for in an employer. I think if, from a personal perspective, if you see that somebody's willing to invest in you, I think you're willing to invest back into the company or back into your employer as well. Certainly, it's a good point of retention because if they see that you're going to do X course this year, next one you're going to, they see that they want you to stay, and that's a message that we see a lot with people coming into us. They're not doing it for the sake of doing it. They're doing it because they want to, they want to be able to take the more elaborate jobs on, the more lucrative jobs on, but they obviously have to upskill their staff. And I do think that the staff appreciate, or colleagues appreciate, the investment that they've put into them.
And Remit, right, has done that for you.
Oh yeah,
right,
massively.
You know, they didn't just give you an opportunity; they invested in you,
And
right?
still are.
And that's why, you know, I can tell by the way that you speak about them that you are extremely happy, right? You found something that you were looking for, and that sense of belonging, right, means that someone has, you know, an organization has taken care of your development. And how does that? And that's what you're talking about, really, isn't it?
Oh yeah,
That's
and I think that's from a personal, or myself and Bob's personal perspective. But this, I think, is a generic. Any employer that's willing to invest. It's quite scary because some of the courses are not cheap; they're quite expensive. There's no initial. We all talk about return on investment, which is a big thing. So if I send somebody on a course and they're going to be able to do that, I think it's got to be over time.
Yeah.
It's not going to be an instant investment they're going to get back. It's going to be, well, they can now take on certain jobs. They can now take on that, and we can work with that, and then obviously they'll progress. The actual skills of the people that they put on the courses will progress. Profit will increase, hopefully. And I do feel that it's a massive thing and a massive benefit to any employer for training-wise, to train people.
A couple of things I'd add is, firstly, that the sector, in terms of maintenance technicians, is well known for people moving around for a couple of extra quid an hour, for example.
Yeah.
And they're far less likely to do that if, as you say, the company's investing in them and they feel valued and that they feel that the career's progressing, which is why, as Darryl said, it's third on the list of why you'd stay with an organisation. Another thing is that if you think of these skills gaps that we're talking about, if they end up being what could be predicted, it's actually counterproductive to the industry, because everybody knows supply and demand means that if you've got less supply than you have of demand for that particular skill set, you're going to pay more for it. The pressure on salaries is always going to be upwards if there's a shortage of supply. So it's worth it industry-wise for companies to invest in these people. And then whether you're a small player or one of the big ones, for example, I mean, I was talking to a customer who has 800 technicians, and in terms of the investment in this, what it gives them is a competitive advantage in that if you think of a really big employer like that, but it's the same for a small employer, the more people that you have trained to be able to deal with EVs as EVs grow, or as I say, ADAS at the moment, the figure is 1 in 10, I think it is, or cars on the road have level 2 autonomy. It's going to be 1 in 2 by 2030. So competitive advantage wise, if you've got the people who are trained to work on these vehicles, firstly the throughput of the maintenance is quicker. Mm-hmm. So obviously that gives you the competitive advantage of productivity. And secondly, you can cover things like holiday cover, shift patterns in different regions for a big employer. It makes your business model productivity far more competitive. So I think my message would be that if you're thinking about whether or not you should invest, that if you don't, you're going to get left behind.
Oh, thank you. I think that's such an inspiring way of putting it. And, you know, over the next few years and looking forward now, and we've got a huge, you know, gap to fill with skilled people. Now, if you were to leave a message to, you know, trying to tell those people that are not in our industry at the moment, they're not in our circles, right, but maybe listening to this podcast, right, and that message, you know, saying there's an opportunity here for you, right, what would you think their first step should be? What would you want them to do?
Become aware, like I say. So whether that's, obviously, all of this information's on our website. All of our contact details are on there. Just call up and talk to us. But as I say, it's about making yourself aware of what the opportunities are. They're huge. As I say, it's so diverse, and it's not just working on electric vehicles. But I saw a documentary recently about the infrastructure side of it, and apparently creating enough electricity isn't going to be the problem. It's all the network of substations that need to be built and maintained, and guess what? There's a skill shortage of the engineers. So across the whole electrification and decarbonisation sector, that is where the future's going to be, and the opportunities, as I say, are endless. And just because you come in at one level and start your training in that area doesn't mean, as you've seen, that that's where you're going to finish your career. The opportunities really are huge, and if you embrace it and you're positive and you work hard, you'll have a fantastic career in this industry.
Oh, thank you very much, Bob, for that. And Darryl, for final words. We're running just on time now, but I want you to tell me something that we can tell our audience. Right? What would you like to put out there as a message?
Two things are probably the technicians that we've got, the aging technicians, that don't be afraid of training for things. I certainly never look back. I was 50 plus, and I've completely different direction to what we was going before, and that's through the training that we've got. We spoke a little earlier about keeping in lane, about being able. We are, as technicians, naturally inquisitive, anyway. So I think that by limiting yourself by not knowing about something, I think that's a massive loss on people that are doing that. Certainly people that are going to be coming into it. The days of lying underneath cars and lorries and things and getting covered in oil and covered in diesel and covered in whatever are few and far between now. It's more of a technician. You've got to be a computer whiz kid to work on things like these. There's no major service into a point with engines to go wrong. It's all to do with motors, which is quite a clean environment to work in now. It's not going home sort of smelling of diesel or petrol or whatever or
Yes.
oil. It's quite a sort of a thing. There's a massive impetus about health and safety, which is what we've got to, what we look at, and it's a big thing that we stipulate with the courses. Don't be afraid to open up your opportunities. We've got more vehicles on the road than we've ever had. People are going to have to look after them. It doesn't matter whether it's plant, it doesn't matter whether it's HGV, light vehicle, electric scooters, electric motorbikes. These are all things that are coming, and people are going to have to fix them. So don't be afraid to train. Reach out and talk to one of us at Remit Training. We'll only give you the best advice that we can, and probably hopefully put you on the right pathway.
That's brilliant. Thank you both. There's a lot of inspiration there, a lot of aspirations that will, we all should be, trying to, follow. The ERS Hub, the Electric Revolution Skills Hub, is also, wants to elevate, right, as many training providers out there as possible. We have a, government remit to make sure that provisions like yourself are, seen in the wider market. And if the audience want to get in touch, they can get in touch with Remit, but they can also find Remit opportunities on the ERS Hub, right? Our role is to make sure that we, support and deliver that sort of consistent piece and collaborative piece. And I really want to thank you for coming down here and representing, alternative provisions and independent provisions, right, as a way of, supporting the community in opportunities, right, and creating things that they can all be part of. So thank you very much, both.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining me on this electrifying episode of Switching On Electrified Skills podcast. Together, we'll shape a future that is powered by electricity. If you would like to learn more about electrification and explore courses and jobs, please visit ershub.co.uk or connect with us via social media channels. Thank you once again for joining me today. Until next time, keep charging ahead and unleash the full potential of your electrifying skills.